Authors Over 50, Writing in Life's Sweetest Third. Authors Over 50's weekly podcast celebrates writers and their journeys to publication. Writing after 50 is a whole story on its own, so let's skip to life's sweetest third and talk with authors about their journey from pen to publish. Welcome. I'm Julia Daly, your host, and I invite you to listen to interviews with writers who've achieved their goal of publishing a book just later in life. We've seen award lists for under 30 or under 40, but I've yet to see lists for those who've achieved a significant milestone of their own, launching a new career and publishing their first book after the age of 50. We will hear about these authors' inspirations, struggles, strategies, and the smell of that first book. These writers' journeys inspire me because I'm one of them. When my guest today was in her 20s on a summer hiatus from teaching in North Carolina, she drove to California and became a dealer at a casino in Lake Tahoe. She says that after teaching high school, handling an unruly gambler was a piece of cake. Eventually, she succumbed to pressure from her family, returned east to take a high-tech job in Boston, and worked on an MFA in writing at Emerson. But casinos were still calling, and she was offered the opportunity to join Princess Cruises. She spent the next 5 years circling the globe and returned home with a unique souvenir, her husband, Ray. Authors are always advised to write about what they know. My guest knows a lot about casinos. Her mystery, Casino Queen, widely acclaimed, is proof of that knowledge. She now lives in Florida, where she writes while gazing at the ocean. She can see the cruise ship sailing out of Port Everglades and sometimes gets a little bit jealous. Welcome to Authors Over 50, Cara Bertoia.
Hello, and welcome to you too.
Thank you, Cara.
Here in Hollywood, Florida.
Well, that's a great place to be if you can't be on a cruise ship.
That's right. I can look at them.
Our opening question on Authors Over 50 is, what took you so long to write your first book?
Well, I think what took so long is I just really wanted to have a lot to write about. And it wasn't like I wasn't writing. I was writing all the time. When I was in my 20s and I worked as a teacher in North Carolina, that is when I went to Lake Tahoe and I got into the casino industry. And as you know, I never returned to teaching. And so over the years, I've just collected many, many stories. And I was always going to write them down, and I was always going to write them down. And one day I was talking to my husband about writing down these stories. And he looked at me and he said, "You're never going to write that book." Pissed me off. So there you go. That's how I wrote my first book, Cruise Quarters.
Well, that's motivation. When somebody doesn't think we can, we really put forth the effort.
It was just the kick in the butt that I needed.
Well, I can only imagine the real life casino experiences you've witnessed over 5 years. How did those influence the story you chose to write?
Well, it was great. I mean, there's so many stories. It's like a little village there. You have all the players, you have all the employees, you have the layout of the casino floor, the table games, the bars, the slot machines, the entertainment, and the hotel. And so it just all comes together to have a little village, and it gives you so many different stories and experiences to write about. And of course, there are all the crimes that are going on all the time.
I once got an application to work on a cruise ship. I thought I could be activities director, but I never followed through with it. But it does seem like such an interesting job.
It was a wonderful life. I really, really enjoyed it. I got to go everywhere in the world. And, I couldn't have had a better education. So that was absolutely fantastic. And then when we came back, we went to live in Palm Springs, where Native American casinos were just opening up. And that was exciting because it was all brand new to everybody. And it just gave me even more things to write about. So I was very, very lucky. I was lucky to be hired at a time where the world was just wide open and there were so many opportunities.
But your book is written in the desert. Casino Queen book is written in the desert about a Native American owned casino, not the high seas where you spent 5 years. Will there be a sequel on a ship?
Well, actually, I've written the prequel. That was the first book I ever published, and it is about my time on the high seas. Of course, it's a novelization, and it is about meeting my husband, who's from Scotland, and our romance. And 3 months after we met, he jumped ship to be with me in Palm Springs. And so that is the story that I tell in Cruise Quarters.
That's exciting. And then I hear that you have a short story that you've just written as well.
The next thing that I'm publishing is The Perfect Breast, and it's a story that I wrote for Breast Cancer Awareness Month. And it follows Hannah Klein through 3 decades of her life as she experiences loss, longing, and love, how cancer affects a family over the long term, and how each member of the family reacts to cancer.
And I think these proceeds are going to the Cancer Association.
Yes, all profits for my book will be donated to cancer research.
That's very, very nice.
No, I just felt compelled to write this story with everything that's going on in the world and everything that's happening. It just seemed like a story to tell.
Very appropriate during this time, and lots of women's issues being bantered around. So it's very nice of you to donate your proceeds to research.
Yes. Thank you.
Cara, once you wrote your first book, how did you proceed? Did you search for an agent or decide to choose a hybrid, a small press, or did you self-publish?
Well, I spent about a year searching for an agent, and there were requests for manuscripts for 6 or 7 agents, but it never quite worked out. So finally, at the end of a year, I decided to self-publish, and then on Kindle. And that was a really great choice. It really worked well because cruise ships are a niche industry, and there's a page on Amazon devoted for it. And my little cruise ship novel was always there at the top of the cruise ship page for many years. So it was a good idea. And if you find a niche market, it really does help.
Definitely. And there's so many options for us today. And certainly Amazon is the largest seller of books in the world. And so that's a great place to be. What about with Casino Queen? Did you follow the same procedure?
No, in Casino Queen, I sent it out to the Wild Rose Press and they accepted it. You get a lot more respect from your family when you have a traditionally published book. So I sent it out to them, and I worked with an editor there for a very long time. And they published it for me. And it was a very different experience, but it was a very good experience because my editor was fantastic. So that was good.
I know that you experienced all of these characters on this ship and in these casinos, and sometimes we can blend them together. But did you have any real people that inspired any of your characters? Did you put them in a mixer and blend them out, or how did you come up with your inspiration for the characters you wrote about?
Well, of course, all my characters were inspired by actual events and actual people along the way. But I won't say any one person was exactly like that person. They were kind of a composite of all the people. I was very lucky that I worked with people from all over the world, so I had so many different nationalities to write about. But my one major character, John Tovar, who is the tribal chairman, he was inspired by my tribal chairman in Palm Springs, who was the second charismatic person I met in the world, because my husband says he has to be the first. So, and he was a wonderful man, and he cared so much for his employees, and he would sit and he would talk to us every night. And he actually started the casino in Palm Springs. So I just wanted to tell his story. And he was a great man. And everybody else is pretty much bits and pieces of all the people I've worked at throughout the years.
Well, you certainly had to change the names to protect the innocent or the guilty.
That's true. There's one person who was kind of a villain that I kind of modeled after he's Irish, but I modeled him after my sarcastic Scottish husband. And he's very funny. And villains are great to write. And let me tell you, working in the casino industry, I had a lot of villains to write about. So we had people that were in the porn business doing internet porn. We had bookies, we had loan sharks, we had very, very rich people, celebrities, just any kind of person from any walk of life. You could find them there.
It's just fascinating to me. Tell us a little bit about the passages that you've brought to share today, and then read from your book so that we can hear your tone and voice.
Okay. Now, my heroine, Caroline, she found herself lonely and in debt in Palm Springs. And so John Tovar invited her to work at the casino. And over the years, they developed a relationship till finally she was made casino manager at the Nighthawk Casino. And she knows that she's there to root out corruption. And now in this passage, she's learning how serious some of her enemies are. A dealer must be able to handle difficult customers in a hostile environment. A few days later, after a surprise rainstorm, the landscape erupted in wildflowers. Indian paintbrush, ocotillo, and purple mat, along with a score of other blooms, painted the desert floor in all shades of the rainbow. Caroline gazed out the window, admiring the countryside as she drove down the hill, past the gun range, around the corner, and onto the road leading to the casino. Her car meandered down the nearly empty highway of the high desert on her way to work, slowly enough to enjoy the glorious day. Stopping at the local donut shop, she took her time choosing a wide variety of tasty treats for the staff. Small gestures like bringing donuts were always a big hit in the employee lounge. Back on the road, her eyes followed the arc of a bald eagle flying across the brilliant blue sky. The eagle landed on the far left corner of the Nighthawk billboard, which stood above the road, 14 feet high and 48 feet wide, enticing travelers to eat, play, win. Glancing upward, she did a double take. A new message painted bright red and 10 feet high covered the billboard. Caroline Popoff must die. She slammed on the brakes, pulled to the curb, and slammed the gear shift into park. She wanted to make sure she had read it right. Getting out of the car, she stood transfixed by the sign. Suddenly, her heart was pounding out of her chest. Sure, she was going to die. Her legs lost all sensation. Paralyzed, she collapsed to the ground, reeling from a panic attack. Somebody wanted her dead. She could never let them, her or him, know they had gotten to her. Just like the British public in World War II, she would keep calm and carry on because this was war. Most threats just rolled off her back, but painting one on a billboard changed a spur-of-the-moment curse into a premeditated crime. She hated when horrible things happened on beautiful days. Screw them. Caroline Popoff was a force to be reckoned with.
That was great.
Oh, thank you.
I've never heard of anybody using a billboard before.
That actually happened. We were driving home from work one day, and there was a sign on the billboard about our boss, and he said his name out there, and he must die. And they had a date actually on the billboard, the date he should die. And of course, he didn't die on that day. So, but that definitely was a story that I worked into the book. It was just too good to let go.
Well, they had to buy that billboard from somebody, so surely there would be a paper trail to find out who made such a threat.
They just painted on top of the billboard that was there. So they had to sneak out in the middle of the night and go out there and paint on the billboard. So that's what made it even more exciting.
Wow. Well, your descriptions of the desert are certainly wonderful. I never had an appreciation for the beauty in the desert till I moved to Texas, and it really is when it's in bloom, it really is spectacular.
And the skies, when the skies are just so crystal clear blue without a cloud in them, and you can just see for miles and miles the vistas, that is just terrific. I love that. Yes, it was a wonderful place to live. And have you ever heard of Joshua Tree?
Yes.
Okay, up in Joshua Tree, you just stand on a ledge in the mountains and you can just see for miles and miles and miles. So the story is set between Palm Springs, which is glitzy and glamorous, and up in the high desert in Joshua Tree. So I like to get both parts of the desert in.
Yeah. Well, Cara, we always have challenges as writers. We like to write and we don't like to promote ourselves, but even the big five are requiring their authors to do most of their publicity. Have you found anything that's worked for you, or maybe something that you've tried that didn't work?
Well, I think I've tried almost everything when promoting my book, but I've done podcasts, I've done many, many blogs. Well, what worked really well is the Desert Sun in Palm Springs did a feature on my novel. And since that was where the book was from, that was a great day for sales. I haven't really put too many ads in for this book because I'm not really sure how well they work anymore. It seems like they're pretty saturated out there, unless you can get a BookBub deal, which I haven't tried to do yet. But that seems to be very successful for writers. But it is a hole that you can go down, and you have to be very careful when choosing how you are going to market your book. What my husband and I like to do is we like to make little reels on Instagram and Facebook, and he reads the quotes from the book in his little Scottish accent, and we make videos, and I quite enjoy doing that. And I think that's a lot of fun.
Well, you're ahead of the curve there. Most people in our age group don't even know what reels are.
I had a great time. Last summer, we went to Europe for 5 months. We went because of the big COVID break. We couldn't go to his family for so long. And we had family in Scotland and family in Israel. So we went to both places. But in between, we traveled in Europe. I mean, we did bare bones traveling. We rode the bus everywhere, the Flix bus. I recommend it highly if you go to Europe. But I would make little Instagrams of reels of all the places that we went to. And I, of course, put my book up there, and I'd have other people have my book up there. So it was a lot of fun. And I just learned how to do it then. Necessity is the mother of invention.
Yes, and that's a great thing to do. And the theme of your book and the locations in your book are wonderful. Jumping off places, like you said, for the newspaper to pick it up. So a lot of people are touting their locations, and that's working.
Yes, it's very good to do that. And I guess to interact with local people and local book clubs. I've done some book clubs over Zoom and in person. And that is so much fun. I love it when you go into a room and people have read your book and they're invested in the character and they want to know why they did this or why they did that, or as you said, how you came up with your idea. So that is just so much fun.
Are there any specific books or seminars or writing retreats or groups that you can share that improved your writing journey?
Well, I must say, I took a class at UCLA under Gail Brandeis, and it was very good. It really did kickstart me after my husband's comment to start my book. And I had always written screenplays, and that's how I started out, writing casino screenplays. But then everything you can see in a movie, you have to translate into words for a book. So she was very cognizant that we work on the 5 senses. So everyone had to be able to see what you were describing. And so that is what I really took away from that class. And it was very helpful. And then later she became my editor. So that was doubly helpful.
What does your family think about your being a writer?
Well, actually, most of my family is very supportive. Of course, there's some people that are never going to read your book, but I don't really worry too much about that because I really like it just when readers read my book. They don't have to be family. But my husband is the most supportive. He reads everything I write, and he reads it every time I write it. So if I do 50 rewrites, he has to do 50 rewrites before I send it to the editor. And my cousin, who's the best because he's great at timelines. And if there are any errors in my timelines or any kind of product or anything like that, he will always catch it. So he's just been an invaluable help for me.
That's great. We do need those beta readers, somebody that'll say, well, in the first chapter, she had green eyes, but in the last chapter, she has brown eyes. And you forget what your characters even look like by the time you write 80,000 words.
Facebook Reels are doing very well now because they're not so many. It's not so inundated yet. It's not so saturated. So Facebook Reels are good to work with. And I would tell people, don't be worried about making them. They're right there. You can put the drafts right on there. They provide the music. They provide all the lettering that you need and any kind of caption or anything like that. So just play around with it. You don't have to make it go live until you have it perfect, So don't be afraid of reels.
That's a great tip. Mm-hmm. Cara, what does writing success look like to you personally?
Writing success looks like having your readers really like your book. That's what it means to me. It's good to have your book sell a lot of copies. That's very good too. But mostly it's the reader reviews that I like to read and I enjoy. Of course, unless they're bad.
We have to block those out because as writers, we can have 500 5-star reviews and we only dwell on the one-star review. And it'll be something like, I read the first page and really couldn't get into it, so I closed the book. I mean, it will be something so bizarre.
I know. I've got one time that said, I didn't like the way the story ended. Well, I'm the one writing the book. When you write your book, you can have it end in a different way. So, and all people have all different tastes. When I never read reviews on a book while I'm reading it, but afterwards I go back and I look at the reviews, and I'm always surprised at the wide range of reviews there are for any author, from 5 stars to 1 stars. And I just think it's fascinating. I love reading reviews, but only after you read the book.
It really is fascinating to see. We do have an audience and they'll gobble up our books, and then some, don't care for them. So, we're in such a society where everybody ranks and rates everything, even their McDonald's burger, comes under fire. So, once they pay for a book, I guess they have the right to write what they want about it. But I try never to review anybody for under 4 stars. If I can't give a book 4 or 5 stars, I'm not going to review it.
Oh yeah, but then in a way, I've thought about that before. But that means that if it lets the people off with the low reviews. So it kind of hurts the people with the higher reviews because, if you're going to give a 2 or a 4, well, if you give a 4, that's not a 5, but then the 2s get by. So yes, that is a conundrum. I've thought about that before, but I usually rate books very well, or, I try not to rate them too badly because I'm an author and I know how that feels. But I probably won't finish a book if I don't think it's not a good book.
Well, if it's a valid criticism, I want to hear those. I want to hear what people didn't like if it's valid. But there seem to be some trolls out there who just want to mess up your rating.
Yeah, they do. Or they want to tell you about somebody else's book. Like, you shouldn't read this book. You should read somebody else's book. And then you think, oh, is that just a plan to get this other author more sales?
Yeah, there's some crazy things going on Amazon and Facebook and all social media.
Well, my only bad rating on this book doesn't have a review with it. So I think, is it someone from my past that doesn't like me or something like that?
So anonymous.
Yes. And that's the only one. And the rest of them are all very good.
Well, as always, our last interview question is, our writers over 50 are quite a unique set. Do you have any advice for writers 50 and above?
Well, I've thought about this a lot, and I have a lot of advice for authors 50 and above. First of all, don't spend too long trying to get an agent. Unless you're a celebrity or you have connections somewhere within the publishing house, it probably won't happen. So then you can go to a press like the Wild Rose Press, or which is a traditional press, or I guess they're hybrid presses that you can work at, or just self-publish it yourself. Get an editor. You do need a book editor because the rules for writing a book are much different than the rules for just writing a paper or something like that. And also, I did this blog for the Charlotte Readers podcast, and it said, when you think you know everything, think again, which means even if you think you know how to spell something, even if you think you know the history of something, then go back in and research it and double check yourself, because a lot of times you'll find out that you're wrong about it. Also, have people that you know that are regular readers read your book and tell you what they think about it, and if the plot works, if there are any plot holes or anything like that. And you can join critique groups, but I'm sometimes worried about that because every person in a critique group is a potential author. So of course they want you to write the book they want to write. So sometimes that can be a problem. And also be careful about going down the marketing hole, because everybody will want to sell you services for everything. And you have to pick and choose very carefully.
Well, Cara, I think that's wise advice for all of us today. And we just appreciate your being with us here and sharing your wonderful journeys on being on cruise ships and in casinos and riding in the desert and now in Florida and watching the cruise ships leave the ports. So thank you so much for being here. And we're excited to say that you're now one of our authors over 50.
Oh, and thank you so much for having me. It was so much fun. I really like the way that, we just interacted and the questions going back and forth. So that was just a great podcast to do.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us today. Please look for Authors Over 50 every Thursday when we will have conversations with accomplished debut novelists over the age of 50. Please subscribe and share with a friend. And check out my own publication journey after 50 at www.juliadaily, that's D-A-I-L-Y, like dailynewspaper.com. Until next time, keep reading and writing. And remember, it's never too late to fulfill a dream in life's sweetest third.